Where are the comms, bruh? That's a topic that's starting to bubble up once again with the player base, while Arrowhead has brought back an OG mission, but it feels a little bit off. We've also got the new Pickrates to run through to show us if all the studio balance changes were worth it or not. There's all that plus more, so stick around as we hit up the latest with Helldivers. Diving straight in with the update on Phase 2 of the Celestial Fence Galactic Campaign, and Phase 2, dubbed Procurement, is coming down to the wire, with the Helldivers attempting to come from behind victory. You see, we've managed to liberate Mox, and the next step would have been to then all jump to Genesis Prime to take on the Squid, but it looks like sneaky Game Master Joel has sprung a little wrinkle on us in the form of the TCS missions themselves. Yes, they are back, with the last time we saw these being during Operation Valiant Enclosure, and that was way back in March 2024. Of course, we all know how that one ended up, as the termicide caused bug super colonies to pop up. We then were sent on a series of missions to turn off those TCS towers, and then the whole dark fluid nuke Meridia thing came around, which, by the way, we did pull off, but that opened up another can of worms as the Illuminate then pointed that wormhole at Super Earth and try to take our homeworld from us. It's funny how these things come full circle, right? And if you know, you know. Now the issue is that with the introduction of those TCS missions on Brilliance, players are flocking to that planet to see what's up. And that's depleting our forces on Genesis Prime. And of course, with the fewer numbers, and we're going up against the fact that we got the Galactic War modifier, well, it looks like at our current pace, we're not going to be able to liberate GP. The order to now hold Brilliance looks like it will be able to outlast a major order timer without us being planetside. So the play here is to dive Genesis Prime, or else losing this second of 3 phases to the current Galactic campaign, putting us receiving the Hyena Marksman Rifle in danger. Speaking of Galactic campaign rewards, and specifically the supply FRV, we've still not heard anything about when it may return, so those of you who did not receive it will have a chance to pick it up. You've been asking, I've been asking, we've all been asking for some sort of announcement, including an ETA, but so far, there's been no official word from Arrowhead. Not only do we not know when, but also where it will be made available and for what type of currency. I don't know, something like it's going to be available in the ship acquisition computer by this date, and it's going to cost you this many rec slips, is what we're needing here. So Arrowhead, you say you listen to these videos, make it happen. Please and thank you. Of course, while we're on the topic of announcements, we did receive update 6.3.1 yesterday, with 2 annoying issues now being fixed, that being the voice chat audio bug and the issue with crashes related to FRV and patterns now being corrected, which I've got to say was massive, because you would have someone join your group, or you'd join a group, and if there were too many vehicle skins activated across those members of the group, it would insta-crash the game. In total, there were 5 crash fixes applied in 6.3.1, with the one of interest, at least for me, being the host crash associated with the Conduct Geological Survey missions. Now, personally, I don't crash when hosting that mission type, but a regular squad member and channel supporter, 𝗏𝒏𝒐𝐺, always crashes to desktop when we activate that final drill objective. And here's hoping that this fix has corrected that long-standing issue. With the TCS missions now reappearing in the game, and for many divers out there, you weren't around when they originally were in the game, here's a quick TLDR on how these things work, along with a few tips to help you knock them out of the park. First off, you'll need to circle around the main tower in the center until you find the activation terminal before you can actually kick this whole thing off. Now, make your way over to one of the 3 towers and find the terminal there and just press the button, which will begin the waves of Terminds that will spawn in and try to damage the tower by getting in close to it and meleeing the structure. Also, keep in mind that our Helldiver weapons and strats can also damage that tower, so I'd stay away from anything that drops down a massive AoE barrage, and instead choose more precision strats like orbital rail cannon to handle those heavies. Tesla towers are actually really good for holding and locking down choke points, along with gas and EMS mortars. But the point is, You don't want to be bringing down huge amounts of pain from the Super Destroyer because that's going to set you back, especially if you start popping that tower. Now, once you do this mechanic of make it over to the tower, press the switch, and defend it on all 3 towers, you'll then run to extraction and press the terminal there to finalize the TCS missions and activate the shuttle to come pick you and your buddies up from the planet. Outside of going ham and damaging the towers with your weapons and strats, these are really pretty straightforward, but I will say this, the version we have right now in the game is far from what I remember them being back in March 2024. Now, I understand that our weapons and strats have improved since then, but I remember the spawns being way more electric with bugs coming in from just basically everywhere. It was a real shootout to keep them off of the base of the towers where you were fighting tooth and nail to not only stay on your feet, but to keep the bugs away from those towers. Extraction was also way different back then because it involved a timer where you and your squad had to relive your best Spartans hold the line moment as wave after wave of bugs poured up the pathways to that extraction pad. What we're seeing right now, at least from the first one here that we recorded, are much too tame, especially on difficulty 10. I've seen your feedback about how the 20-minute extraction missions with those rockets are just absolute snooze fests, and if anything, the current TCS missions feel much the same. I've actually passed along some feedback to the team at Arrowhead that they can hopefully act on in short order because these missions, when they're cooking, can be some insanely fun and chaotic combat. If you want to experience them, check it out. They should take you less than 20 minutes, and then I would recommend you get back to diving on Genesis Prime. I wanted to let you know that I have been receiving and reading your comments and DMs asking what's happening with Arrowhead, with many of you pointing back to Johan's June 12th tweet saying that he had essentially tried to cash some checks that he wasn't capable of living up to. Now, this post over in the Unfiltered Reddit really reinforces that thought, asking, did he just give up because he couldn't keep the schedule? Going on to say, no new post on Twitter and nothing on Reddit relating to updating us. Apparently bi-weekly is whenever he feels like. It'd be so easy to not write checks you can't and won't cash. Speaking to those studio updates, there was a recent response from community manager 𝒊𝒏𝒕𝒆𝒔𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈 saying that the director in charge of creating those blog posts was out sick, but that he was now back in the office and working on it. Now, aside from the point that the Reddit post brings up that basically the schedule was being missed, and this brings into question the studio's commitment to maintaining their initiative for more transparency, there's another point here that is not often discussed. It's one thing to receive these groomed announcements from different members of the Arrowhead team, but it's another thing entirely to see them come directly from Johan. You see, for many in the Helldivers community, he is the face of Helldivers. And so when he shows up in the Unfiltered Reddit and then makes that bi-weekly commitment saying that he would check back in every 2 weeks to then miss those check-ins, and now we have others creating the blog check-ins, listen, they are needed. I'm not saying that they aren't, but for the head of Arrowhead to willingly make that commitment and then balk from the very beginning, for many, it left a bad taste. Ever since we were building up to our attack on Cyberstan, we've seen a lot of pretty insane balance changes made by Arrowhead, mostly aimed at vehicles and durable damage. It ended up being an arms race where the enemy's durable damage was tripled, making our armor worthless. Then we saw even more enemies get durable damage buffs. We then got a rework of our mechs, a second rework of the mechs, also including things like the Bastion tank. And, overall it's been pretty topsy-turvy, to say the least. And so, with all of that in mind, it's now time to take a look at the pick rates to see if any of those months of changes have had any real effect on the game's balance or player confidence in weapons and stratagems, again, through those pick rates. And according to Helldive.live, we've got some expected results here and a few interesting ones as well. This is all data grabbed since the EXO Experts War Bond went live, so overall, that update saw a few ups and downs in terms of player balance, but anyways, let's start off with the Terminid faction and stratagems. The orbital napalm barrage has always been so good against the bugs, and it's still in the top spot here, picked by over 30% of divers versus that faction. Rounding out the top 10 strats versus bugs are the 500 kg, Gatling Sentry, Orbital Laser, Machine Gun Sentry, Supply Pack, Sword of Surprise number 1 here, the 𝒂𝒨𝒃𝒄𝒃. Sword of Surprise number 2, the 𝒊𝒏𝒈r, Eagle Napalm Airstrike, and finally, the Cremator. Now I say Sword of Surprise because mechs have always been strong versus the bugs, who are, again, mostly a melee faction, but if we back up the pick rates to when Entrenched Division came out, so this is before the mechs got adjusted to have higher armor and bigger health pools, you can see the 𝒂𝒨𝒃𝒄𝒃 in 17th spot with a 7.8% pick rate. So again, this is before any of those buffs came around. After the EXO Experts Warbond and all those dozens upon dozens of changes, the E-Man is sitting now at 10.1%. Were those months of having the mechs and other armor pieces basically turned to trash worth it for an end net result of a 2.3% gain? Personally, I'd say no, especially when we could be dedicating our time to other areas of the game instead of endless waves of balancing that gets us back to the point we were before it all began. Anyways, switching gears now over to the Automatons, here are your top 10 strats, starting off with the Orbital Laser, 500 kg, Rocket Sentry, Queso Cannon, Recoilless, Autocannon Sentry, Supply Pack, Eagle Strafing Run, damn I love that one, Eagle Airstrike, and then rounding out the bots is the Orbital 380mm HE Barrage. Notice that you can't even see a piece of armor like a mech or the Bastion tank on this breakdown versus the bots because, again, our armor has always been bad against that faction because they specialize in range damage, and half the time you're lucky to even get your mech down planet side without a limb being blown off or it getting outright nuked as the bots target it with savage aggression as Pelican 1 tries to drop it off. By the way, just so you know, the first mech to appear on the bots breakdown is the E-Man in 20th place. For the Squid, you'll see many of the same picks here as you did on the bots, with the top spot going to the Orbital Laser, followed up by the 500 kg, Gatling Sentry, Machine Gun Sentry, Stalwart, awesome weapon there by the way, Orbital Napalm Barrage, Supply Pack, Eagle Strafing Run, Rocket Sentry, and Orbital Gatling Barrage, which is also pretty awesome as long as you can get the targeting on point. The 𝒂𝒨𝒃𝒄𝒃 is the first piece of armor to show up on the breakdowns versus the Squid in 16th place. While we're on the subject, here's the top picks for primary weapons versus different factions, starting off with the Terminds, and the Coyote reigns supreme, currently showing as the only primary weapon reaching into the double digits for pick rates. You've also got some traditional heavyweights in here as well, like the Eruptor, the Sweeper, the Crossbow, and bringing up the caboose in the top 10 is the good old Breaker Incendiary. For the Automatons, the Eruptor takes the top spot for most picked primary, with the Coyote missing out on number 1 by only 0.2%. I'm also a big fan here of the Punisher Plasma, which is in the 10th spot, and you also see the likes here of the Scorcher, the Censor, the Libpen, and Trident showing up in the top 10 for the bots as well. Quick, before we dive into the most picked primaries versus the Illuminate, what's your guess? Ready? Let's begin. If you said the Coyote, you'd be right. Again, being the only primary weapon here to reach double digits for this faction. The Sweeper, Trident, and Eruptor are all here as well, along with a surprise pick at number 10, the Base Liberator. Overall, I guess I've got a few questions for you. The first being, were there any surprises here on the pick rate charts for you? Was there a weapon or stratagem that you swear by that didn't make it into the top 10? Definitely drop us all a comment and let us know about your secret sauce. The other topic is the one of spending all that time buffing enemies and then Helldivers and all that constant back and forth. I guess the question here, was it all worth it? Because based on the pick rates, we're not seeing any sort of sizable movement. The things that were good against a faction before all this began are still good. The things that were bad are still bad. But, you know, that's just my thoughts on it all, and I look forward to reading your comments. If you found the video informative, please hit subscribe and ring the notifications bell. And before I go, I'd like to say thank you to all of our hardcore channel supporters. Until the next one, this is 𝒊𝒏𝒕𝒆𝒔𝒕𝒊𝒏𝒈, signing off.